and further back to the legendary era of Atlantis, and even further back to the mythic era of Lemuria. That's our beginning in terms of ancestral line of descent. Dark skin, broad nose, thick lips, and furrowed hair is the description of a Moor wherever he or she is. It doesn't matter if she speaks Spanish or he speaks German or he speaks Russian. It doesn't matter. Or Swahili. We're still Moors. And I heard a white boy say something interesting that may well be factually true. That the present day Africans don't consider us Africans. They consider us Americans. And that may be true because most Africans don't know their own history. They know their traditions, their community so-called tribal traditions. You'd be amazed. You know, I confronted a young sister, not with the intent of embarrassing her, in Cleveland State, an African young lady going to college at Cleveland State, and asked her what did the word Africa mean. And she didn't know. Because the word African, or Africa rather, is not an African word. It's an English word, translated from a Latin word, translated from an ancient Kemetic term. The word Africanus is the concept given to the territory that was once called Carthagus, which became, of course, Carthage. And the Carthaginians, which of course includes Hannibal, whom three different, and Joseph Ben Yochanan showed this in his book, three different pictures of three different white men have been used in Eurocentric history about Carthagenia and Hannibal as Hannibal. Three different white men. And the brother was dark skin, broad nose, thick lips, and furrowed hair. Yochanan drew, because he could not evidently get a photograph of, the picture of the Carthaginian coin with, on one side, Hannibal's head, and on the other side, an elephant, which was, of course, his trademark in terms of his dominancy of both northern Africa as well as Italy and Spain. And as evidence that the man they should be trying to describe and point to as the greatest military leader of that era, whom I don't know if it's still true because the technology has affected military strategies, was heralded by West Point as the strategist of any military onslaught. But they were telling the West Pointers this was a European, that the Carthaginians were Europeans, and of course that again was a part of the conspiracy. You take the glory of those whom they were trampling upon as slaves and to place them at the lowest point on their literary decks. Astrology is A, a science, B, an art, C, a philosophy. The Moors of contemporary times, which includes the Masons, that those are also Moors, black or white, Japanese or Russian, that they are all tracing and borrowing our ethnocentric descendancy. Whenever you see a European with a fez on, he's saying he's you. Okay? Because he knows the laws that the Moorish family, community, and culture discovered, inherited, and used for estimatedly some 100,000 years. That's the estimate of how long astrology has been around. But it supersedes that when you look at this enormous backlog of information concerning the mythic Lemuria and Atlantis and Egypt. I think we'll get right into that. The only problem is I don't have access to the little tidbits of stuff I need. Let me see if I can hook this up without. We're going to look at the big picture today and then get on with defining terminology via symbology. Astrology and the science of the Moors does not begin with the study of the planets. It's impossible to look out into space with no knowledge of what to look for and find knowledge. That's impossible to do. You have to start with some concept. All knowledge, all philosophy, all science begins with intuition. Your higher mind tells, whispers, explains, shows you something. And from that theory, principle, or truth, you find yourself in search of its greater meaning. How to apply that hint, hunch, theory, whisper, concept, idea. The symbology of Moorish science can be found in evidence in nature. That's the reality. I'm trying to piece this up here. Hey, how you doing? Good. With nothing here. Oh, well, okay, let me see if I can get this one to stay here. Maybe it'll work. So, by understanding symbolisms, again, I'm supposed to have, and I think I've done it once, actually brought a Macintosh apple, actually cut it open and showed you the 5-pointed star in the Macintosh apple as a perfect geometric symbol that was interpreted by one of our ancestors in its meaning. Of the first concept is the 5-pointed star, which is man. The crescent, moon, is mother, woman. There is no crescent in the sky. There is no 5-pointed star in the sky. The moon is always full. We only see certain segments of it at certain times as it makes its movement passing between the earth and the sun. A shadow is cast over it at 4 different phases, the 4 phases of the moon. The fastest traveling planet in our solar system, which only takes 28.14 day to traverse around the earth. That's the fastest moving planet in our solar system. Actually, as I mentioned before, it's not a planet. It's virtually a meteor. Now, there's theories about what Elijah said, that God reached down and pulled this big chunk of earth out of the earth and threw it out into space. Yeah. Elijah said that, and also a white boy said that, Charles Fillmore, who founded the Metaphysical School of Unity. So it could be true. Okay. Yeah, we said God, we're not necessarily talking about one being. If you look in Quran and in the Old Testament, there's this concept, we and us. Okay. So the concept of Allah is not in reference to one. Those up there in that spaceship, 200 miles up, that is Allah. The we of Allah. Okay. We'll touch on that a little bit more. I'm trying to get to this. I got a Gemini rising, Sagittarius sun. But brother, so I'm all over the place mentally, so I have to pull myself back to refocus. That's my mental bent. That's how my mind works. What I want to do is bring you to the great year. The relevancy is so that we can qualm some of the spraying phobias about the end of the world, the destruction of man. All that stuff is flying around as you go downtown, the street preacher down there, condemning everybody and calling everybody a sinner, and God is going to punish everybody, and Jesus is coming in the world. All that stuff has been going on before you all were born. The end of the world. The end of anything on this planet in this solar system is in reference to the end of a cycle. The last day is the last day of a cycle. That's all. The end of the world as we know it is also a part of the end of a cycle. And this stuff on this planet is getting ready to change. Ain't no doubt about it. Okay? But I don't want to lend fuel to fear. Change is always for the better. It isn't easy change, but it's better. The universe is always in process of progress. It doesn't tear up to set things back. It tears up to rebuild. Construction, destruction, and reconstruction. Those are the elements of evolution. That they've always been going on and will continue to go on until this solar system is in its perfect state, which will be in a mental state, not a physical one. Okay, let me do this here. I'll over this. Our solar system, meaning our planets and its moons, revolve around our sun. Then our sun takes a focal point in space, and it revolves around a spiritual sun and a greater sun. In other words, there's a sun in our universe bigger than our sun. Okay? In other words, as our solar system revolves on its axis and turns in its orbital flight, this whole system is doing the same thing around another sun. That's part of the procession. In this process, our sun moves nearer to its central sun, and the central sun that governs our galaxy, where other solar systems are also a part of this greater planetary family, is moving towards a central field of energy, electromagnetic field of energy. In the Kemetic language, it is called Allah, from here, the field of energy. In the Hindu text, it is called Brahma, the Great One. That is not a person, that's pure energy. The closer our planetary system is pulled by the central sun as it revolves to this center, the more energy we get of a higher text. The more energy we get as a higher text, the more intelligence, the more awareness, the more light we filter into our nature. That's a part of the awakening process. Where we are right now is approximately at this point in the process of awakening. Okay, we're between 1700 AD and 4100 AD to be general in the process. It is called in pre-reference the Aquarian Age, and it is not. We're at the end of the Piscean Age. The Piscean Age is represented in the scriptures and in the religious texts by A, a fish, B, fisherman, C, belief systems. Pisces is I believe. Now what we're talking about are not, at this point, are not the signs, but the constellations themselves. They are also making a revolution and an evolution. We are part of the constellational movement in our solar or constellational system. Okay? This is a bigger picture. The importance of understanding that is that when that particular system is rising, moving towards the higher point of 0 degrees Aries, as the planets move towards a particular degree. That would be this line here on any chart, astrological or constellational. That's 0 degrees Aries. That's the horizon. Okay, this line that goes across here is the horizon. As it moves towards this point, things are waking up. Here is where Jesus is given credit for having appeared in this, quote, Piscean age, which brought everything into and still bring everything into and through what is called the Dark Ages. Now, the brothers in Afrocentric thoughts are saying that the Dark Ages was the era of the ignorance of the European. Well, yes and no. The yes of it is that those that brought knowledge into Europe were your ancestors. That's the history of the Moors in Spain or in Europe. Spain is not a Mexican Spanish word. It comes from an African term, Hispana, which means hidden place. The Apoplecsis Mountains that look like, just to give you a general idea, something like this. Spain sits down inside this bowl, I'll draw it this way, of peaks. And as they came out of North Africa at the port of Kuta, which you can swim from the port of Kuta in North Africa, you can swim to Godz, which is Europe, which is Spain. That's how close they were. When they were chased out of, some of them did swim back across that lake in approximately 1500 AD. Of course, CMB said it was approximately 1700 AD because a lot more stayed in Europe and went up into these mountains and became bandits, and some stayed out in the ocean and became pirates. And so the real pirates were Moors. The ones that were raiding the European ships, those were black seamen, because they had the navigational skills, knowledge to move ships from one point in the ocean to another. The European did not, until Leo Africanus. I'm getting away here. But I might want to make reference to that here in this Dark Ages. Your parents were beginning to flourish even during this period. Not all of it, okay, and that's important to know. There's never been a point in these low cycles where 90% of all black folks could read and write, had the sophistication of the highest of mind. But there was an order in Africa, a sense of self in Africa that is only partially there now. Even in 1996, there is an extraordinary level of a lack of self-knowledge among the Africans. His karma has been unbelievably awesome, and it's still going on. But it will end before the year 2000. And that's his karma, not yours. Yours is over here, okay? And we need to understand that. That doesn't mean to discount the African there. It's to understand that the kind of suffering the African is indulging in there is not what you are supposed to be thinking about being a part of. Okay? You got to work through this maze to rise. And it gives you an advantage that we'll be talking about as we go along throughout the rest of the weeks. From this dark age to approximately 1700 AD is when this electricity in consciousness began to have its effect. When I say electricity, I'm talking about this level of consciousness that awakens life. When you're born, after 9 months, you come out, your fists are closed, and you get an inner jolt, and your hands fly open. It isn't the spanking that makes the baby cry, it's waking up. As some women have demonstrated, having their child in the bathtub and letting the child float out into water. Okay? And then the hands pop open for those that are more observant. And when the baby comes out of the water, the baby automatically cries. We get an electrical jolt. We are electrical beings. This is your battery. This is your charging force. Your energy, center of energy is here. This is G. This is O. This is D. Generator, operator, destroyer. When these three are awake and in line, you G-O-D. That's what you're trying to get to, but you can't get there until you go through M-A-N. Master, able, and noble. That's your first step from B-O-Y. Biological organism of youth. Boys and tomboys. Those are the three steps to put on the three hoods. Boyhood, manhood, godhood. That's what you're trying to do. The word hood means head because you put the hood on your head. If you see a spiritual being, usually, not always, in the spirit, he'll either have a hood on or one on his back. That means he's God. That isn't the only thing that symbolizes that, but it's an important concept to know. I'm not doing textbook astrology because more science, as we should have it, is not in this book. What I'm giving you, you ain't gonna come across. Ain't nobody gonna write down A-L-L-A-H and tell you that means arm, leg, arm, head. That ain't in the book. That's more science. A-L-L-A-H is not an Arabic word. That's English. Okay. M-A-N is a big mystical secret. The secret is how to get there, not what it means. And we got brothers that had some of this knowledge for years. Man, they handed out little bitty teaspoons. And every time I think about it, it pisses me off. I had to go all over the country to gather this stuff little bit by little bit. Went to Philadelphia and got one word. You know, they had 3 weeks, and all I learned was one word. You know, but it was an important word. But I mean, that's been my karmic plight. You know, I like to travel. Shit, I used to jump on a bus with just bus fare and go somewhere. You know, that was me. You know. Okay, so here in this electrical period between, I'm just making this general now. I don't want to get specific. I'll make some reference to the specifics as we go along. The dark coming out, we're out of, quote, the dark ages, when consciousness is dense. What is important about understanding this evolving, revolving, devolving cycle is that when this energy, when our system following its central sun moves away from the central field, the energy decreases. If I would stand here and keep turning the lights down, 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 you could see less and less and less. That's the same effect.
Space, the final
of energy lowered. You understand less and less and less. Until finally, you can't feel the wave of energy in your environment. Now you can feel when your old lady is mad at you. You can feel when she's turned on. See, there were periods in the cyclical dip when none of that mattered. A warrior saw a female, that meant pussy. You know, it didn't mean love, didn't mean romance. That meant just plain outright P-U-S-S-Y. That's all. And it didn't matter whose mama, daughter, sister, uncle, nun. It didn't matter. That was basically an animal stuff. See, I'm being a bit crude, but I want you to understand the difference of how we've evolved from not too many hundreds of years ago. Okay? And as we see the beast is still among us, we still see brothers behaving like beasts. We kept trying to find a white boy. That's the beast. The Pope. That's the beast. No, it's that Pope. That's the beast. No, it's Ronald Reagan. No, brother. The beast is inside. And if you go unaware of him, you see, and let him out, he'll show you he's a beast. See, that's your energy locked up down here and cannot flow throughout your body in balance. That's the Kundalini energy, the fire. When this stuff comes way up, you have to be prepared to receive it. If it comes up there and your chakras are not open and balanced, this thing here takes over. It stays hard 24/7, and you don't want to do nothing but jump. You know? And it'll make you act total fool. If you wonder why there are so many that are raping, that they are more the victims than the women they rape. They have no control down here, and don't even know that. I don't know what I don't know. But we're responsible for what we do. So it's understanding the power that's in your nature. It's the key. Man, know thyself. And be true is to control yourself. If you know you got a bad temper, then you practice breathing to release the clogs of energy. You don't say, I got a bad temper, and then go off on somebody, and then apologize and say, well, man, I got a bad temper. What is that? Nothing. That's what that is. Learn to control, direct, not suppress. That's a part of self-knowledge. Learn to control and direct, not suppress. When your energy is down here, and you feel it moving, and you ain't even thinking about sex or a woman, then you know it's just energy. Then you have to learn how to pull it back up. We'll deal with that as you go along. So in this electrical age, now the problem again of textbook reading is that every time you look at some reference to Atlantis, some reference to the Aquarian age, come on in. Okay. The electrical age, the energy is coming up during this period, including Joanne here. Every writer that said something about this age mentioned everybody white that invented something in this early cycle. They didn't mention Ibn Muhammad Rashad, the master of polite conversation, a black man in Europe, whom queens and kings, earls and dukes traveled thousands of miles just to sit and talk with this man. This is the man who invented crystal plates and glasses, who put on the table knife, fork, spoon, okay, and manners of how to sit down and eat. Go change your clothes, take a bath 3 times a day. That was a black man. I'm trying to think of his Spanish name. It just kind of slipped back. It'll come back to me. If you get it into Spanish history, you'll hear his name.
Zayard.
Huh?
Zayard. Zayard.
No, it'll come to me. He is the one who taught European students astrology, numerology, palmistry, and the other sciences of self-knowledge. One of the masters, not the only one. There were many in Europe. The European Jew left North Africa once it was announced by King Henry that he needed maps to traverse the Mediterranean area to get into, particularly into West Africa, where there was rumored by the Arab looters that there was untold amounts of gold. Gold was simply found floating on top of the water after the floods. The Imbutu, and this can be verified in a book titled The Golden Trade of the Moors by E.W. Babel, which is a little bit hard to get. It's been out of print. It came back in print. It goes in and out, in and out. It's a little small book called The Golden Trade of the Moors, about the Moors of West Africa. What we are talking about in the golden age of the Moors, essentially what the Moors were doing in North Africa, coming out of North Africa into Europe. The Imbutu had so much gold, they were literally selling that gold or trading that gold, same thing in that era, for salt. The Imbutu are the ones who stretched their lips with round discs of arrows. There's the Spanish name of Ibn Muhammad. Averroes is his name. You'll find it in almost every book dealing with the Middle Ages. You hear this, the name Averroes. The philosopher, evidently, though it is not said in the exoteric text, was also a spiritual master. Because when people get up and go travel hundreds, if not thousands of miles to see someone, it isn't them doing it, it's something drawing them. So only the spiritual part of a being can draw an individual from that grand of a distance, and they were coming consistently just to talk with him. The enormous amount of gold is what pushed this era forward. Europe was running out, or had run out of gold, or were running out, let's put it that way. When I say Europe, I'm talking not just about kings and queens, I'm talking about the Catholic Church, okay, who were the looters, who sent regiments out to defeat empires and to bring the loot back to the Pope, the Vatican. See, where into this day, artifice of Egypt, and ancient Egypt, so-called Africa, is in that building. Hieroglyphic relics are in and underneath the steps of the Vatican, this vast library of literatures. You see, because they did the same thing in Europe with the books of the library set up by Moorish masters and master teachers. They burned them. First, they got them, translated them. Then after they began pushing the Moors out, they burned the books. The same thing they did in Alexandria. Plato got Alexander to go in there and defeat them. Stole the books. He didn't go running looking for gold. Aristotle wanted the books, the manuscripts. Then they burned the library. They burned up the black family's past. If we wonder why back here is this void, this amnesia that was carried so far forward. When you look back, you see black folks setting up irrigation lines, agricultural systems, who knew how to rotate crops, who could lay sidewalks and paved streets, gas lamps on the street. That's what's going on in Europe in the 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th century. Your folk were doing that in European countries or towns. You going to sit down or?
I'm going to move my car into that.
All right, okay, all right. You want to find out if it's noteworthy, huh?
No, man.
Okay. All right, I'll be here. Okay, what we're talking about here is this.
Our son is missing. He's a 2-year-old boy. His name is Joe. He was playing on our driveway and then he
Period of time when certain inventions were discovered and invented of an electrical power nature. Steamship, gin mill, all of that, then of course electricity. But as Dr. Ivan van Sertima points out, there were Moors in Europe at that time in his book titled The African Presence in Early Europe. It's still on the market. Ivan van Sertima's book which is on the Moors, talks about a particular Moorish mathematician, chemist, that was working not only with glass, but was working with the optics of light and glass. That's the first stab of electricity and light. It is shown that in the tunnel of Giza, how they got light into the tunnels was with shined metal squares of either silver or plutonium, whatever reflected light, or gold, and they would set them on various angles down through the corridors like this. Let me see. This is just trying to give you an idea of what I'm talking about here. All the way down the corridors, and let the sun at a certain time, which would angle at the doorway or opening, would reflect off the metal, that metal, that metal, that metal, and then fill the temple with light. That's mathematics, that's astronomy and mathematics. Knowledge, science. Okay. The first point of illumination inside. That's what your parents were doing. Each time you hear me say your parents, I'm talking about the back of your head. I'm talking about your genetic coding. That these genes of inventiveness, creativity, imagination, philosophical thinking are part of your genetic makeup. When a group of people, as with a family, if a mother raising 4 kids keeps telling 1 or 2 or all of those kids, y'all dumb as hell, y'all the dumbest kids ever, and I've heard parents say that in McDonald's, Burger King, on the street, you're a dumb little ass. That doesn't go through here. That stays in there. And that thought rumbles around like a song, a bad song. I'm dumb. I'm dumb. My mama said I'm dumb. As in the illustration of the illusion of inferiority as a complex. If you want to know what was happening while we were sleeping, as children, as groups of people in a country that did not like us, what they thought of us had more sway and impact on our consciousness than our own consciousness had. Otherwise, we would never have called each other N-I-G-G-R after or during slavery. We would never come up with the idea that we had bad hair, which now sounds stupid. And I keep pointing out the important factor that if you're talking about the valuableness of black, then you've got to talk about perfect, beautiful, and powerful. When you talk about the idea of black, not what it says in the dictionary, which will give you a psychosis if you read that and don't deal with it. You know, I don't know if any of you all have read that. One day, just pick up the dictionary and read what they have to say about black. You talk about schizophrenic. You know, two extremes about this one concept. But that is what was going on in the European psyche about black folks. On one hand, they loved and admired the black woman in Europe. And after the invasion and the raiding, and then, quote, the Crusades, one woman, according to Dana Drew in the Golden Age of the Moors, is one who took this idea, Manichaeistic racism, and turned it around. Where everything black was wonderful, beautiful, and good, everything black was bad, ugly, and demonic. They used to paint the devil red. After the expulsion, Queen Elizabeth turned it around. Every devil became black. Hey, how you doing? Sit down. Good to see you. Hi there, dear. Sit down. Move your cup there and then you sit right in front. Okay? So we're talking the psychology of how things got twisted. Okay? Because you can learn as much as you want, but if you can't clear up how your image sets in your mind, it's not going to raise you up. Okay? You know, I mean, we got black folks. If praying and singing got everybody saved and spiritually awake, all or most of our folks would be spiritually awake. Because our parents been singing and praying all these years. But they've been singing and praying with this stuff in the back of their head. They ain't nothing. They ain't worth nothing. They ugly. I'm black. All this stuff rambles around in the back of their head like a bad album. You have to consciously change it. And you change it by knowledge. Okay? Out of the darkness cometh the light. That is the key to understanding one aspect of black. Out of the darkness cometh the light. The light is perfect. The light is beautiful. The light is powerful. If the light that came out of the darkness is beautiful, perfect, and powerful, then black must be beautiful, perfect, and powerful. That's the way to view black. Then to understand melanin, it gives you a clearer sense of this dynamic, deathless substance. When they cut a mummy's arm open in his venous system after 4,000 years and found melanin still alive in his veins, you know you had something, you got something in your body that don't die. Which gets on with the philosophical theory that the human body was designed to live forever. In fact, the Mason subscribes to that idea of the regeneration for a physical, everlasting body. Okay, all this fits right into this awakening period here. We're talking about the great year, which is 24,000 years of revolution, 12,000 ascending, 12,000 descending. Each phase of it, in terms of the 1/20th period, is 1,200 years, 1,200 years, 1,200 years, 1,200 years. I'm not going to get into each segment, but later on I'm going to mention something about each cycle. But I just want to give the general picture so that you understand the process of evolution affects us on an individual level as well as a collective level. We are constantly evolving as we revolve. Why the Kybalion is so important to have. So you understand the law of evolution, the law of revolution, and the law of devolution. When the energies go down, it has nothing to do with the individual becoming bad, evil. He, she, they cannot see as clearly on the inside or outside. They move nearer to their lower nature, which means lower nature behavior. The beast, the animal of human nature. That's the symbolic representation of the symbol of Sagittarius, half horse, half man. We're all half animal, half divine. Trapped, as it were, until you understand that you're inside, not trapped. A physical form in a physical universe, not realizing that you're a spiritual being. And that your work is to master your physical nature. Otherwise, no one would have called you lords of the earth. It means to master the earth. The premise of that mastery is what allows you to move towards godhood. John 10, 31, 36, I always mention it in terms of understanding the idea of godhood, that it is the intent of the Creator and the universe. One woman who had one of those near-death experiences got up on the higher plane, or what she thought was a heavenly plane, and the spirit, before she crossed over, she didn't. Evidently, the energy is so powerful that when they get up, they don't want to leave. It said, "You have to go back. You cheated." That's the difference between the subconscious man, the personality, and the soul. When the soul gets ready to leave, it will do stuff to get out of the body. Okay, and you know that's subtle knowledge. You know that virtually from the outside it's suicide. That the soul is committing suicide to get out of the body, to leave. Children will do that. You know, children will come down here and find their environment so unpleasant, so inharmonious. They want to go back to where they came from, where everything was wonderful. And they'll do stuff to leave. But the problem is, they got to come right back. You know? We are sent down here, every one of us, with a purpose and a plan. You're not down here wandering around lost. Yes.
Is that the process of devolution?
The devolution is the process where consciousness is pulled down, devolved.
Okay.
Yes. The concept of fall is to descend from higher plane to a denser plane. If you came from a mental plane into an astral plane, you have fallen. If you came from an astral plane to a physical plane, you have fallen. Remember from whence thou hast fallen, and repent. Turn around and go back up. Okay? That's the whole idea of repent is an anagrammatic concept. I guess I'll do that. I'm straying away, but like my intent is not to teach ABC astrology. It's to teach you more science, which is what our astrology is. So I'll be doing this side issue stuff here. Look at these two words. I guess the camera's picking this up too. It's supposed to be somebody on the camera, but the way it's set, I guess it's picking all this up. Yes. This repents. Serpent. This is the serpent, the kundalini, the coiled serpent. Kunda, meaning coil line. This is how you repent. This is the serpent that Moses lifted up in the desert. Okay? That's how you get up here. Yes.
So, since the lower chakras are concerned more with sexual energy, then sexuality should actually be healthy instead of a taboo issue.
When you're biochemically, glandularly balanced, it's healthy. When your glandular nature is off balance, then the fire that comes from the lower chakra affects the other glands and organs differently. Okay? The energy is supposed to come from this area here up and extend itself out through the 5 points. That's balance. That's what you're trying to do in yoga, meditation, and Christians are trying to do in prayer. Then when they see, quote, the Holy Ghost or the Holy Spirit, the energy is raised up from the same place. Ain't no different place in the Christian's body than a Muslim's body or a Negro's body or Ku Klux Klaner. The pattern is the same because as we're pointing out here, there are only 12 people on the planet. That's it. 12 blueprints. Multiplied so many times each blueprint. And then multiplied again. The pattern is still 12. Okay? So that's the idea of descending and to remember from whence thou hast descended. That's what meditation is. One master calls meditation simply divine remembrance. Because at a certain point you'll remember something. One kid came up from New York, I was upstairs a couple years ago. First time in his life he ever meditated. Sit down and I put the meditation music on and rung the bell. Bing! He said in the first couple of minutes he could see himself sitting out on the ground his legs crossed in another body with long hair, you know, as a yogi. You know, it took him about 2 minutes. You know. First, he didn't even know how to meditate because I just explained the basics. But his consciousness was ready to release it. And he just happened to find a harmonious place and point to receive it. The soul is willing to give it up. The question is, are you willing to receive it? But when you receive higher knowledge, that means change. And most of us don't like to change quickly. We like to do it slowly. That's why we have so much strife. Because pain makes us want to change. Man, I can go on like this. You know, right? Yeah. That's our nature, lower nature, you know, that forces us up towards our higher nature. So we can receive it. Okay, let's get back here for a brief minute, and I want to get on with some more information. This period here, electricity, the Genmeal, the inventive cycle is moving towards the Aquarian age. Still, this is still, again, the Piscean age. Now you see here, the constellation of Virgo, Pisces is over here, but remember these two are the reflections of each other, okay? We're not talking about the sign of, we're talking about the constellation of, okay? So we're moving towards the constellation of Aquarius. I like to describe where we are now as you standing on the other side of the street and I'm on the other side of the street, and I throw water out in the street and a little bit of it splash on your shoes. Well, you didn't get wet, but you got a little bit on you. That's where we are in this remarkable age of knowing, of knowledge and power, harmony, universal brotherhood. That's what we're moving towards. We're not going to end up, all of us in Africa, with atomic bombs and guns and everything, killing the white boy forever. It just ain't going to be like that. I mean, that's not the divine plan. And I don't mean Allah's plan versus Jehovah's plan versus, I'm talking about the universe. There's harmony, it's balance. And those who cannot receive that level of spiritual energy as a message, the big broom comes and sweeps them off. And that's when you hear about the hurricanes and the tornadoes, and that's Mother Nature's big broom cleaning the carpet. Recycle, they got to go back. And there's going to be a lot of it. There's not going to be half the planet and half the, like some dudes, and half of mankind shall die, damn, scared to death, man, But I mean, hurricanes and storms have been taking off groups forever. I mean, it ain't nothing new. But it is going to step up. There'll be more hurricanes, more storms, more tornadoes. If you are tuned in, divinely guided, you'll be over there when the floor shakes there. That's when you're trying to get hooked up. And I'd like to point out something interesting. If you think of the devastation of the planet in relationship to divine guidance, if you're hooked up properly, and a hurricane happened right now, and this stuff starts rattling and shaking, the Spirit would only have to lift you up this high for you not to feel any of it. And float you right on out the door, walking on air. You have potential. When you're hooked up, okay? So it's the thing. Don't succumb to fears. Don't succumb to accidents. Don't succumb to dangers. Don't succumb to death. The spiritual purpose is to live through death. There's no victory in dying. That's a door. And if you didn't get it over here, and you go through the door, you got to get it over there. And if you don't get it over there, you got to come back over here, okay? You have a choice. Get it while you can. Take as much with you when you leave here as you possibly can. So if you're lucky, you can leave like Hazara and Paramahansa, wide awake, knowing exactly where they're going because they've been up there too many times before. But that's the way to leave. Or like Elijah, laid down with friends and flowers and family, and just closed his eyes and went on somewhere. That's the way to leave. Not car, you all, who is it? All bent up, car lights all in your eye. Because if you get banged up, when you leave here, and you're all banged up, you got to go to the hospital on the next astral plane. When the dead wake up, like I see my nephew, he raised up like this. He was on a hospital bed on an astral plane, and would not listen. Nobody, his brother couldn't, his father couldn't tell him nothing, his friends couldn't tell him nothing. Okay, so here approximately we're between 1700 AD and 4100 AD in terms of 1996 and the oncoming New Age. I'm giving this vast period here because this is where all the good stuff is going to happen while this seemingly bad stuff is going on. The problem, I think, in our psychology is none of our folks are doing any of the inventing, discovering, uncovering stuff. Now, one of the factors is we've had a golden era, a golden age. Then the baton seems to be passed on to someone else. But it's up to them to take a correct stance of responsibility, that it's not for them. Like when you turn on channel 69 on Sundays and this little blonde dude and this little white lady is talking about Jesus and the responsibilities of Europe. That's their Christianity. That isn't the universe they're talking about. You've got some great souls that are supposed to come back here to help. The prophecy is that ISIS is supposed to come back during this period in here, around 2000 or so, and help. But she won't come back just to help black folks. She'll come back to help souls. Those are universal beings. Those are narrow-minded, small, frightened, angry individuals. They have an understanding of the universe. Yes.
Can you explain ISIS a little bit? I understand that the Egyptians, they wrote allegorical stories, and I understand the story about Isis and Osiris.
Mm-hmm.
So, who is Isis? Is she an allegorical story, or is she
A real being?
A real person, yeah.
Both.
A real being. She's both.
Yeah. When you read a mythological view about gods, then read a history about the same personalities, you have two levels of knowledge. That's what wisdom is. It's not history. That's wisdom. Why it's given in allegorical context. Because it's talking about more than one level of things. Okay. Isis is Zedekias in the ancient language.